take his sword and throw it far. Let it shine under the morning star. Why am I to? I am the Antichrist, falling from the sky with grace into your arms rain. One for my heart and two for sure. 3 tears for all the souls below. One day return them into figures. Burn them all with all my faith. Why am I to? I'm the Antichrist, falling from the sky with grace into the arms raised.
Hello, we are broadcasting from in the basement at an undisclosed location.
If you take a person and remove their human connections, you will find that person in distress. Without those connections to regulate them, they will plunge into antisocial behavior. One might be shocked at this, but this is to be expected. Just like if you step on an ant, it will crush beneath your heel. What changed here? Well, the environment changed. Humans are not perfect, far from that, but what makes them function is their collective nature. This collective reliance on each other propelled them to the top of the food chain, enjoying security and peace from predation. This connective tissue that binds families together and enmeshes them into wider communities not only elevated humanity, but also regulated their mental state. Human connections are needed from the cradle and every stage they pass through to the graves, and any breakdown along that chain leads to dysfunctions. Dysfunctions such as criminality, immorality, and despair. Generational households are very rare, but this was the norm throughout human history. 2 young people having children and thrust into the world alone without guidance and direction from their extended families is alien to the human family. To compel them to seek their own provisions, lodging, and raise their children alone is cruel and inefficient, for the extended family could aid them with time and the experiences that they hold. This compulsion for newlyweds to go it alone is known as the nuclear family. The nuclear family is 2 parents and their children isolated from the rest of their family with the goal of not being a burden. This nuclear ideal is a cornerstone of the Western world, where interdependence is frowned upon and independence from the extended family is viewed as noble, and anything less is viewed as a failure. The extended family disintegrated after the Industrial Revolution as capital rose and the needs for families to coexist to survive diminished. This sudden injection of plenty into the lives of the poor severed their bonds, like solid food severs breast milk from a child. The need for uncles, aunts, grandparents, and cousins and the likes was deemed superfluous. What began as sudden prosperity of the Industrial Revolution turned to the permanent severing of humanity's oldest institution. The extended family was sacrificed on the altar of the nuclear family. 2 parents alone combined have 48 hours a day to function, to earn their provisions, raise their children, and seek fulfillment for themselves. The extended family used to fill the role of helpers. Now parents are compelled to earn ever more in order to acquire the assistance required by their children's very existence. The time constraint underneath which they live can never be alleviated except by purchasing of others' labor, childcare, education, and babysitting. We went from a village to 2 parents alone in just a home. This worked well for a small window where wages were high enough for a single breadwinner to support a family, where mothers could take care of household duties. This system was much weaker than the extended family, for the wisdom of many will always be greater than that of the few. Regardless, the nuclear family still functioned relatively well, with the white picket fences in the suburbs, 2.5 children and a dog. Everything worked fine until the social contract was changed once again, as the idea of independence took hold even further, and the nuclear family went from 2 parents down to just 1. The nuclear family was seen in academia as a branch of patriarchy. What was once mutual dependence for the sake of the children was suddenly considered oppression. Patriarchy became the greatest of evils, and women's advancement, no-fault divorce, and abortion was seen as the solution. These movements individually are not to blame, but when combined, turned what was left of the nuclear family into complete atomization. The legal system changed to reflect society's new priorities. This was the last step in the separation of the sexes and complete isolation of the parents, and through them, the children. In times gone by, children had 2 parents and 2 families to give support and information in the extended family. Then they were reduced to 2 parents in a household alone. This was bad enough, and the children suffered more than we knew. But the final death nail in the family was the war of the sexes. Children are alone with only the internet as a nexus. Games like Roblox, Minecraft, and social media is the world that they inhabit because their homes are empty and they can sense it. Either their fathers were never around, or their parents suddenly divorced, or they live with 2 parents together stressed because extended families are not there for support. The children are alone and they feel it intuitively. If this wasn't bad enough, they are worse off as we are as children, for we had friends outside and we could see them. Their friends live in a virtual world which is filled with dopamine surges, altering their growing brain like heroin of the purest. Likes and dislikes are dopamine hits to the brain, and their minds are completely wired differently than they were in our age. To live in this virtual world is bad enough. To make matters worse, they're given pharmaceutical drugs by school so they could be compliant, to quiet their suffering and sit on their desks on their behinds. Evil is too nice a word to describe this. Mass shooters were all on serotonin inhibiting drugs and were active shooters when they were in acute withdrawals. There are obviously other reasons mass shootings occur, but my line of thinking is easy to infer. We grew up with families and social connections. They grew up in divorces and social media nexus. The fact is, we are becoming more individualistic, and to expect anyone to have rights over you sounds militaristic. The alternative of family and community is to be alone. Think hard. When was the last time someone called you on the phone? Drug addicts almost always quit if they had a place to call home, and odds are they turned to drugs to begin with because they were left alone. Generational families were our oldest family structure for a reason. We failed as a collective to understand what we had. Everyone for themselves only hurts the children real bad.
Take his sword and throw it far. Let it shine under the morning star. Why unite? I am the Antichrist, falling from the sky with grace into your arms, rain. into the